Good evening and welcome to the Middleton Common Council. I'm calling to order the Common Council on October 17th, 2023 here in the city of Middleton. With that, I'd like to do roll call.
Alder Shaver.
Here.
Wilkus.
Here.
Cole.
Here.
Mayor Kuhn.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
And Iro.
Here.
Lorman was here. Crow.
Here.
With that, do we have any public comments? It looks like we do. Wonderful. Kevin Spittler, please come to the front and state your name and address.
I am Kevin Spittler. I live at 6848 Frank White Right. I'm here this evening merely to congratulate the city on winning the LEED Gold Award, being the first city in the state of Wisconsin to do so, in particular to Kelly Hilliard, who put so much work into it, which I know she will be officially honored tonight. It's a great example for the rest of the state and the country. And I think I can speak for 350 Wisconsin on thanking you on behalf of the whole state organization that I'm part of. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for that. Do we have any online comments? Okay. Moving to the public hearing. It is 7:32, 7:31. The Beloved Proof LLC, DBA The Social at Middleton Market is requesting a Class B fermented malt beverage and Class B intoxicating reserve liquor license located at 7622 Lisa Lane with Ashley Allen, 5815 Raymond Road, number 5, Madison, Wisconsin as agent. Do we have any comments? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. Moving on to presentation. Lead for Cities Gold Certification presentation, Kelly Hilliard, Sustainability Coordinator.
Hello, everyone. Would you like to know what you won and why? Congratulations, everyone. Middleton did finally receive its certification, its gold certification in Lead for Cities. We have a certificate to prove this and lots of data. So I'm going to go through a little bit of that tonight.
Kelly, I'm just going to ask if we can show instead of Brian, is it possible to show Kelly in that? Okay, we're only seeing Brian's name and the presentation.
Okay. Well, anyway, in August of this year, we finally received our LEED certification from the USGBC, the United States Green Building Council. And 3 years ago, we were selected to be a part of the second Lead for Cities cohort, which is made up of 20 cities and counties across America. We applied to be part of that cohort and received a grant award with the help from Dane County, who were also considering going through this process at the time, and they really helped us with that application when we applied. I have a background in LEED certifications. That's my career background. I helped certify 12 buildings in Wisconsin, so I'm familiar with the process and the data collection and how it's really transformational for the market. And I saw a huge difference occur over the course of about 7 years when I was working with LEED building certifications. Contractors started doing things differently, different products became available on the market, and things changed rather quickly. So when I saw that there was a LEED for Cities certification, I was really intrigued. Next slide, please. Oh, wonderful. Maybe it's not on.
Maybe you point to his.
Yeah, it's on.
You have to point at his computer. Not
Oh,
this.
maybe.
There
There
you
we
go.
go.
Okay, well, in short, Lead for Cities measures sustainability at the jurisdictional level. And there are over 200 registered projects right now and over 150 now certified worldwide, one of which we are now a part of that. Next slide, please. LEED certification and most everything the USGBC does, I feel, is a really democratic and iterative process, meaning that they really do a lot of stakeholder engagement. And the LEED for Cities certification really came from about 15 years of stakeholder engagement with other cities, other groups, other previous certifications from different organizations. And it really evolved into something that cities can use to measure sustainability community-wide, not just for their city government. Next slide, please. I'm not going to read through all this, but I did want to say that, the city has energy goals, both for the city and for the entire community at large. And we have so many wonderful plans and priorities that are all backed up by data and analysis for how to approach energy use and efficiency at the city government level. But I was also really interested in looking at the community scale and how to measure that. Because if we really want to mitigate climate change, we need to be looking at all of Middleton, not just city government. I was also really intrigued and interested in how we could measure quality of life, things like civic empowerment, environmental justice, and some of the less tangible data points. I think overall that identifying the gaps and prioritizing next steps was one of the most important things I hope to get out of the certification. Next slide, please. LEED provides a really great comprehensive management framework for sustainability, and it can serve as a roadmap for local governments to set goals and measure progress. Next slide, please. We joined the 20 city cohort in the March of 2020, and we were set to meet with technical advisors and all those other cities in Washington, DC for a multi-day training. And in 2020, that's when COVID emerged and everything shut down. So my flight was canceled 3 days before I was due to fly out. So you can remember that time was a time of chaos and switching to Zoom and to still meeting with people, but doing it virtually. And we did not know how to do that for quite a while. And so it took several weeks, maybe even months, to sort of rework, retool, get back with the city departments and start meeting about LEED again. There were many more other pressing problems at that time and things to be concerned about. And everyone in departments was pulled away from things like data analysis at that point. It was more of a triage to take care of people. So one thing I wanted to do during this time when we were going through the process was try to align our city plans. I think the more plans that you can have that align with one another and ask you to track and measure the same things, the more successful you're going to be. And it just so happened that at that time we were launching our comprehensive plan rewrite. And so if you go back and read that beautiful document, you'll see a lot of LEED peppered throughout that document. There's a lot of resources, actions, measures, benchmarks that were inserted into our comprehensive plan. And then therefore, after that, the plans that followed, the sustainable city plan, the strategic plan, and now the zoning code, lighting ordinance, sustainable purchasing plan, which you'll soon see. So all of these plans are in alignment, and we really did use LEED as a framework for going through those. Next slide, please. So I won't read these bullet points, and you can't read the small type on the right, but that is actually our official scorecard for Middleton for the LEED process. And I'll send that out as a separate document to the alders and post it online, but it shows which credits we received, which ones we didn't. Some of them we didn't go for on purpose. Some of them weren't appropriate for our city. Others we ran out of time, but we did really, I think, discover some meaningful things. Next slide, please. So the LEED certification process is made up of prerequisite credits that we have to achieve no matter what to proceed in the process. And then there's also credits which are optional that just add to the credits and the points you've already received. There's base conditions that we looked at that took a really deep dive into where is Middleton sitting right now compared to other cities on a number of sustainability indicators. And then we also had to track performance. So we had to get in the weeds with real numbers and do a lot of calculations on where we stand. And I'll go through some of that data in a slide or two. Next slide, please. This is just another way of looking at the scorecard. You can see at the top the list of natural systems, transportation and land use, water efficiency, energy and materials and resources, and then quality of life, which is at the far right. Those are the different measures, sustainability measures we were tracking and analyzing in the city. Next slide, please. Our base conditions were the first thing we had to do, and it took many months. It was really a lot of assessment, probably 80 pages of writing to go through and look at how we manage our solid waste as a whole community, not just a city. What are our demographics? How can you assess those under a lot of different categories and ways of looking at our demographics? Water access and quality, and power access and reliability. And all those things, I thought that we wrote them really well, and LEED came back and said on page 8, I saw a sentence and I want you to back that up with some more data, documentation. So they are really looking deeply at what we're writing to make sure that we're really accomplishing what we say we're accomplishing. Next slide, please. And now for some of the actual data. The performance was also prerequisite for LEED certification. And we had to go through and do a lot of calculations, sometimes talk to the county, talk to all the departments in the city, and look at lots of spreadsheets to find out how we're performing in these different categories. One interesting thing was that our vehicle miles traveled per day, maybe it's not surprising, but it was 12.8 miles per day in 2020, down from 16.2 in 2019. But compared to a lot of other cities, we did actually quite well in that category, which tells you how much Americans drive all over the country. One of the categories that we didn't do as well in was water consumption, and I was really shocked by that. It's not something I would have thought we would uncover in our data analysis, but apparently Middletonians use 82 gallons of water per day. Is this true? I don't know, but I want to take a deeper look at that. It's something that I didn't think was on our radar so much, but you can imagine how this would differ greatly from our friends in Arizona, who are probably much more cognizant of how many gallons of water they use per day. We have a 37% diversion percentage from our landfill. So there's lots of room for improvement, but also comparatively, we're doing okay on that. Our measure of income inequality is pretty high. It's obviously right in line with the rest of Dane County, a little bit more income inequality in Dane County than other counties, which is also maybe not surprising. Next slide, please. This is another way of looking at all that data, and it shows how we stack up to other cities and the global averages. And we exceed the global average in most of these categories, except for water. So that's something I want to look into more. We really did well in energy, and I think that that's our energy use. And I think that's a lot because we have solar and municipal in our municipal buildings, but also we have RER agreements, both the school district and the city, with our utility for the Morey Fields solar, and we did pretty well in that category. Our quality of life was also very high, but when we got into other data, we saw more detail that told a better story about that. Next slide, please. Here's just a couple examples of credits to end the presentation. We did look at identifying compact and complete centers, which LEED calls CCCs. And it was basically analyzing where in our city is the most walkable with access to all kinds of services like grocery stores, banks, civic resources, and found that 45% of our population lives close to a center like this. So we did receive 1 point, but not 2. So we have room to improve there, but overall Middleton's a pretty walkable suburb, especially. And then there's other strategies that are more qualitative. And so LEED asked that we do things like adopt a comprehensive housing policy and housing needs assessment, which we have done. So we wrote quite a lot about that. Next slide, please. This just shows the certification process from the LEED application. There's a preliminary review, and then LEED responds, you correct things, add to them, and then there's a final review stage. Next slide, please. And One thing that Middleton really shines in, and it's no surprise to anyone, is the amount of green space we have in our city. And that was something that LEED noticed. Our technical advisors were really happy to see this, but 100% of our dwelling units have a green space within 1/2 mile walking distance, which is really impressive. And we're so proud that 25% of the land in Middleton is reserved for parks and conservancy uses. That's a huge quality of life issue. Next slide, please. This is the last bit of data I'll show tonight. LEED did, I think, a good job of showing gaps and areas for improvement. And a lot of this isn't surprising perhaps, but it shows where we might prioritize our work in the future. We all know that housing and transportation are really expensive in Middleton. That's no surprise. Our distributional equity, which demonstrates, for example, that median earnings across gender and key sociocultural groups are within 5 percentage points of the total median earnings. That's something that we noticed that Middleton really has an issue with. Middleton has disparities across categories such as education, workforce mobility, housing ownership, graduation rates, and equitable employment. So even though we are a really lovely community with a high quality of life, there's some disparities that we could take a look at and really dig into. And we are working on a lot of these things. As you know, streetlight efficiency is in the budget and we're working through that. We have a new lighting ordinance that will be reviewed. And so we are making progress on a lot of these things. So next slide, please. So what's next? Review the results, commit to tracking annual progress. And I really want to be transparent with all of this data so that the public sees it as well and that council is really familiar with it to give an overall snapshot of where we are as a community. And I think lastly, telling our story and celebrating our success is also really important because I think residents want to know that we are committed to sustainability. And I think a lot of this data really proves that and shows that. Next slide, please. So at celebration time, we were able to go to Greenbuild this year, where Middleton was, I feel, very honored in multiple ways and times by the LEED staff and by the USGBC. There were evening events where they honored us. Our mayor was invited to speak at one of the main stage events with other mayors and county board commissioners from Alexandria and the city of Columbia and South Carolina. And so there was a lot of sharing. We learned a lot. Daphne Shu, a planner, was also able to go, and we had a really great time for about 5 days. Next slide, please. This just shows some pictures from Greenbuild. It shows our Mayor Kuhn up on stage with the executive director of the climate mayors and the other 2 leaders from out east. And then we had a really great press event that I want to thank our communications director for helping with. And he was able to bring so many state leaders to Middleton to celebrate in our success. And they have since talked about it. And now I'm getting flooded with phone calls from newspapers, from other media. LEED wants to do a story on Middleton. They love how we've aligned our plans with the LEED framework. And they're a big fan of Mayor Kuhn now. So who knows? So I just want to thank the city staff for being so patient with me and for the alders now and the alders that were alders in 2020, mayors past and present. Dane County was a huge help. Our utility came through with key data that seemed impossible to get. I made a lot of new friends in the region, some who've even contacted me and were writing joint grants now because of LEED. I feel like I got to know them. Many desperate calls. So one more slide. So that's it. There's a lot of information online. I have a lot of information and I'll provide a better report that gives you some hard data for you to look over. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. It was really good information. Moving on to proclamations and starting with the proclamation celebrating the city of Middleton's designation as a LEED Gold City and recognizing Kelly Hilliard.
Kelly, where are you? You should be visible. for this. We are recognizing you. Please come up. It's my honor to read this proclamation celebrating the City of Middleton's Gold LEED certification. Whereas the City of Middleton, through its efforts and action, is recognized as a champion of sustainability and clean energy. And whereas the Middleton Sustainability Committee has championed such initiatives as clean energy, land stewardship, environmental education, food, transportation, waste reduction, and water conservation and management, earning numerous grants and awards. And whereas the City of Middleton is honored to be recognized as a gold level municipality by the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED certification process, which further demonstrates Middleton's commitment to creating healthy and sustainable places within the community. And whereas special recognition and praise is deserved for Sustainability Coordinator Kelly Hilliard for her tireless efforts and dedication leading the city through the Lead for Cities program since 2020. Now, therefore, the Common Council of the City of Middleton and Mayor Emily Kuhn hereby recognize and celebrate the City of Middleton's designation as Wisconsin's first LEED Gold city and acknowledge the continued work that is necessary to address climate change, both locally and beyond. This proclamation was adopted at a regular meeting of the Middleton Common Council on the 17th day of October 2023. And Madam Chair, I am proud to move approval.
This is Katie. I will second.
Thank you to both of you. Any discussion?
Yes. If you don't mind. Congratulations, Kelly. This is huge hours of work I know that you put in. And I love your idea of making sure that everyone in the city knows about this, because I think that the pride that they can feel about being one of the first cities to have this certification will just kind of keep the ball rolling, and people will pay more attention than they ever had, and, you know, strive for even more. So congrats. And I look forward to helping you get the word out.
That sounds great. I think we should follow in your lead and share that too, all the good things. With that, all those in favor of approving the proclamation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. Come do a photo. I know we keep calling you up. I'm so sorry. How about I hold this?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Congratulations, Kelly. The mayor needs to.
Moving on to the proclamation honoring Andrew Steele for receiving the rank of Eagle Scout.
I'm reading the whole thing. Okay, thank you. I didn't know. Andrew's not here. Okay. Proclamation honoring Andrew Steele for receiving the rank of Eagle Scout. Whereas the mission of Scouts BSA is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetime by instilling in them values of Scout oath and law. And Scouts achieve their ranking by fulfilling requirements in areas of leadership, service, and outdoor skills. And whereas an Eagle Scout is not just a rank of an award, an Eagle Scout is a friend, a scholar, a mentor, someone who betters themselves in their community. And whereas Andrew Steele, member of Scouts BSA Troop 140 Middleton of the Glacier Edge Council, Madison, Wisconsin, received his Eagle Scout rank, the highest achievement attainable in Scouts BSA. And whereas Andrew has earned 27 merit badges, he served his troop as a den chief, librarian, patrol leader, and assistant senior patrol leader. He passed his Eagle Board of Review on June 20, 2023. Whereas for his Eagle Scout leadership service project, Andrew led a group of both youth and adults in building raptor perches for the new raptor shelter at the Dane County Humane Society Wildlife Center. He also made possum shelters for from repurposed coolers to keep possums and other small animals warm during the winter. Whereas in his many years of scouting, Andrew learned leadership and developed a passion to serve those around him and make a difference in his community. Now and therefore, on behalf of the city of Middleton, I hereby proclaim, recognize, and thank Andrew Steele for his many accomplishments, passion for his community, and specifically for receiving the rank of Eagle Scout. We wish Andrew and the best in his future plans. This proclamation is effective this date of it is Sunday, October 15th, 2023, not today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the proclamation?
Yes, this is Katie. I will, as a friend of North America's only marsupial, the possum, I will move that we approve this proclamation.
Do I have a second?
Foreman seconds.
Excellent. Any discussion? Just for the record, I love that you share the marsupial possum. I learned that from her a few months ago, and it's a great thing.
Yes.
So, and congratulations to our Eagle Scout. Much excited for him. All those in favor of approving the proclamation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you for reading that. Next is the proclamation honoring Devin Noak for receiving the rank of Eagle Scout.
Whereas the mission of Scouts BSA is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetime and instilling in them the values of the Scout Oath and Law, and Scouts achieve their ranking by fulfilling requirements in areas of leadership, service, and outdoor skills. And whereas an Eagle Scout is not just a rank or an award, an Eagle Scout is a friend, a scholar, a mentor, someone who betters themselves and their community. And whereas Devin Noak, member of Scout BSA Troop 140 of Middleton of the Glacier Edge Council, Madison, Wisconsin, received his Eagle Scout rank, the highest achievement attainable in Boy Scouts or Scouts BSA. And whereas Devin has earned 28 merit badges, he has served his troop as a quartermaster, librarian, patrol leader, and chaplain aide. He passed his Eagle Border Review on June 20th, 2023. Whereas for his Eagle Scout Leadership Service Project, Devin led a group of both youths and adults in rebuilding a 14-foot high and 22-foot wide wooden sign in the shape of an M along University Avenue at the entrance to downtown Middleton. It greets people coming from Madison and displays the emblems of service clubs, churches, and organizations such as the Scout troops that serve the citizens of Middleton and the surrounding area. Whereas in his many years of scouting, Devin learned leadership and developed a passion to serve those around him and make a difference in his community. Now, therefore, on behalf of the city of Middleton, I hereby proclaim, recognize, and thank Devin Noak for his many accomplishments, passion for his community, and specifically for receiving the rank of Eagle Scout. We wish Devin the best in his future plans. This proclamation is effective this date of September, October 15th, 2023. I move acceptance of this proclamation.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
This is Wilkus. I will second.
Thank you for that. Any discussion?
I would just like to add a comment if I were, because I was a leader of Troop 140 and I'm a Eagle Scout. And it's rewarding to see this activity, knowing that I think nationally, the average number of scouts who start who get Eagle are somewhere between 2% and 4%. And I think Troop 140 does itself very proud of what it does. So congratulations to them all.
Very nice.
Yeah, well, I'll second that. That's wonderful. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the proclamation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you for reading that. Okay, moving on to approval of consent agenda as listed in the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item number 3 for discussion.
Do I have a second?
Schaefer seconds.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as listed in the agenda minus number 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Going back to item number 3 of the consent agenda, claim from Jennifer Mertes for an injury that occurred in Stricker Park on September 24th, 2023.
Madam Chair, I ask that this be pulled just because I think it should indicate in the agenda that it is the recommendation that we deny the claim. So instead of just saying claim from Jennifer Mertz, I think it should say denial of claim.
Okay,
And I am also curious to know if the pothole has been filled.
well, it's a good question. Was there a motion to deny the claim? Is that yes? Are you denying the claim? Yes?
Yes, I'm moving that we accept the staff recommendation to deny the claim from Jennifer Mertz for an injury that occurred in Stricker Park on September 24th, 2023. That was the recommendation in the staff memo, but it was not clear from the consent agenda what the action actually was.
Very good. Thank you for stating that. Do I have a second?
This is Jackson. I'll second.
All right. And staff, can you come up to answer the clarifying question?
It has been addressed. The crew was out there and did an initial response to get that corrected as soon as the claim came in.
Great, thank you.
Very good. I'm glad that our staff can work together and help each other out. And any other discussion or clarifying questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of denying the claim from Ms. Mertes for an injury that occurred in Stricker Park on September 24th, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Just make sure. Moving on to agreements. Number 1, consideration and potential action on specialized aviation service operations or SASO agreement with Capital Flight. I think I will ask for some staff background on this, since it has to do with our airport and agreements.
May I first move, I'd like to move approval of the Specialized Aviation Service Operations Agreement with Capital Flight LLC, subject to final city attorney review and approval and incorporating several changes that were approved at the Finance Committee meeting.
Do I have a second?
Ms. Wilkes, I'll second.
All right.
Thank you. So this was a request that came to the Airport Commission for kind of a new specialized aviation service operations agreement that would become effective after the conclusion of the current agreement that's in place until April of 2024. The president of Capital Flight did appear in front of the Airport Commission to discuss the request on the Airport Commission on 2 separate motions. One voted 4-1 to recommend approval of the agreement with the applicant's request of changing the term from 5 years to 15 years. The logic behind that is to match the airport hangar lease terms, which are 15 years. And number 2, that if the council were to approve the change in term from 5 to 15 years, that in the effort to be equitable with other similar agreements at the airport, that they consider in the future a change of term from 5 years to 15 years for the fixed based operator contract. And that would be a separate item that would come to the council in the future.
Very good. Any discussion?
Yeah. Just a point of clarification. Are they asking to extend the current contract another 15 years, or are we renewing a new 15-year contract after the end of the 5 years?
Yeah, I think just based upon how the discussion went at the Airport Commission, it'd be cleaner to have it as a new, because we're changing the term. The current existing contract only allowed for a 5-year expansion within the bounds of the current contract.
Essentially, if we move this, we're approving a new contract.
That would be
to begin
effective
with
in April of 20.
75-year ends.
Yep.
Great clarifying question. Thank you for that. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consideration and potential action on specialized aviation service operation agreement with Capital Flight LLC, subject to city attorney final approval. Please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
The motion passes 7-1. All right, moving on to budget. It says direction regarding publication of the notice for the 2024 budget public hearing.
This is Haniro. I move approval of publishing the notice for the 2024 budget public hearing scheduled on November 13th at 7 p.m.
Ms. Wilkus, I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just a clarification, this is a council meeting that will have this with it, so it's a special, it's not just
Yes.
here.
it's a-
Okay, thank you.
Also, a good clarifying question, because I wasn't sure if it was just finance or the whole. Mhm, go ahead.
Is this hearing, I know they get published in newspapers. Is it put on the city website as well?
Yes, I mean, so the reason we have to schedule it out this far ahead is to meet our legal notice requirements in newspaper for publishing, but yes, it will also be put on the city's website, sent out as a similar special meeting notice that we would do for any other council meeting.
Great, thanks.
Excellent, and I'm glad you're asking that question,
And social media, I assume as well. Maybe Brent?
because we could be sharing, we could be amplifying. I love it. All right, great. All those in favor of approving the publishing of the budget public hearing on November 13th at 7 p.m. as a city council meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to ordinances, noting that it's a first reading and that final action may be taken upon approval of motion to suspend the rules under section 1.07 Middleton General Ordinances. Number 1, an ordinance to amend section 7.178K3 to allow for longer street closures for a special event for certain downtown streets. Do I have a motion?
This is Wilkus. I will move to put this forward and to suspend the rules. for me.
Do we have to vote on the suspension first?
Technically, under parliamentary procedures, yes, you should vote on the motion to suspend first and then a second subsequent motion for the actual thing you want to.
So my motion is to suspend the rules.
Very good. Do I have a second?
This is Cole. I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor of suspending the rules for the first item, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Go ahead.
And I would also move approval for the changes to the ordinance, or for an ordinance to amend section 717.8K3 to allow for longer street closures for special events for certain downtown streets as put forth by LNO.
Thank you for that. Do I have a second?
This is Nelson. I'll second.
Any discussion?
I have a question. This applies to Hubbard Avenue between Parmenter Street and Aurora Street, Aurora Street between Elmwood Avenue and Hubbard Avenue, and Terrace Avenue between North High Point Road and Aurora Street. And I was just wondering, why is Elmwood between Aurora and Parmenter not?
It's was intended just to be the two streets of the parking around.
Around Stonehorse Green,
yes.
not all the way around Stonehorse Green?
No,
Okay,
the ballards are in place to close those two streets off very
Okay.
concisely, and so it is meant for that.
okay,
those
thank
two
you.
Streets.
Great clarifying question, and glad to hear about those ballards. I've seen them, but I didn't realize it was in all places. So thank you for sharing that. All those in favor of approving the ordinance, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the second ordinance, an ordinance to update section 3.01 regarding the budget process.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of suspending the rules for item number 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I would also like to propose a motion for the ordinance to update section 3.01 regarding the budget process.
Do I have a second to approve?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of updating section 3.01 regarding the budget process, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Moving on to resolution. The resolution 2023-50 adjusted compensation for elected officials to keep up with inflation.
Madam Chair, I'd like to speak to this resolution, and it should say adjusting compensation for elected officials. Alder Cole and I bring this forward. There's no recommendation from the Finance Committee to approve or deny. The resolution makes a simple adjustment for inflation to the compensation for elected officials. That includes the municipal judge, the 8 alders, and the mayor in different years, depending on their terms. And the action is recommended by Alder Cole and myself because there has been no increase since 2007 for the judge and the mayor, and 2008 for the alders. Inflation has led to those amounts as set in the ordinance being less than about 70% of the value that they were to our peers in 2007 and 2008. And that's because inflation has gone up 48% since 2007 and 42% since 2008. The amounts in the resolution simply reflect a straight up calculation based on this consumer price index of the calculators available on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. Other amounts could be considered. I'm amenable to that. And I would welcome suggestions and discussion. I would also welcome hearing from colleagues about whether their objection is to all of the proposed compensation adjustments or just some of them. I would also note that the current proposed budget does include an increase in both the compensation and the associated FICA and Wisconsin Retirement System contribution for the municipal judge, because the proposal is for that increase to take place beginning next year.
Okay, so in finance, this was a little bit of a hot topic. Do we have any feelings about the topic?
Madam Chair, just point of information, is there a motion and a second on this one?
Thank you for reminding me.
I would move. Right now, I'm going to move approval.
And this is Cole. I'll second.
Any discussion?
This presumably takes place once people are reelected, right?
Yes.
Yes, this would not,
It'd be
with the exception,
Whoever comes in next in some office.
right, with the exception of the municipal judge, nobody who's currently holding office, we would not be voting on an increase for ourselves unless we're reelected. And it's staggered, or the suggested effective date for the alders is intentionally 2025 so that the even numbered alders aren't receiving more than the odd numbered alders, because our election is in the spring.
Alder Crow.
And I came in the finance meeting, I think when you guys started on this. I'm not sure how much of it I missed, but I got the gist of what you were talking about in finance. My gut reaction to this is I don't like the appearance of giving ourselves raises. I realize it's not giving ourselves raises, it's giving the positions raises for in the future. But when we're struggling with budget items and how do we pay for this and how do we pay for that, and I realize this isn't a huge amount compared to the full city budget, but just appearance wise, I don't like it. Not to say I completely disagree with it, and I've heard the arguments about encouraging more people to run. And I understand those arguments. But I believe that, and I think this was said in finance too, that none of us runs for the money, and anybody who would be running wouldn't be running for the compensation. And I understand that we're all probably pretty well privileged, and we have the time to take away from our jobs. We have money to pay for different expenses that happen with being on council, and that might deter some people from running. Again, time off from job, money that it would cost people to do stuff. But even with that, I have a hard time supporting any kind of raise.
Say that last part again, I'm sorry.
I have a hard time supporting any kind of raise. Again, just partly how it appears.
No, go.
Alder Nelson.
Thank you. Yeah, this is, I'm going to use a word that doesn't mean much, but it's a squidgy topic, right? But as someone who is self-employed, sometimes that pays the electric bill. So yes, we are all pretty privileged here. And yes, and we do a lot of work for our constituents. And I think that the constituents are allowed to expect good work from us. And I think that we need to know our value as well. And I get it. I totally get it. I can't raise my prices at work because it makes me too uneasy. So I totally get it.
Thank you for that. Alder Schaefer.
Yeah, I guess I'll be a little more pragmatic, perhaps in response to Alder Crow. Somebody at some point 10 years ago thought that people needed to be compensated. And so that part's already there. So to me, this is not an issue about should we or do we get compensated. It is an issue of the compensation that was given and the reasons it was given. Should it also continue to keep up with whatever those reasons were, which means you have to ultimately move against inflation. I think it's important for the judge, the mayor, et cetera. I didn't even know I was getting paid when I ran for the office, but it's still nice. It's a little bit of a pat on the back that says you're working your tail off, and here it is. And again, I support it partly because it's always been there, and somebody along the line thought it was good. And I think we just need to keep up with the times, whatever it is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Alder Cole.
No, I understand the optics and that feeling for sure. But for me, for someone who's been working in pay equity and economic security work for a long time, this is why I am co-sponsoring this resolution. It is important for me. It is an issue of equity and inclusion. So to address maybe some of the comments I heard at finance, supporting the work and time that it takes to be an alder and a mayor and a judge with more fair and reasonable compensation is important. To me anyway. It is a privilege to serve in our city in these ways, but I think it shouldn't be limited to just those who have the means to be able to serve in this capacity, because we are largely donating our time. It's not a 1-for-1. We're not getting paid per hour. And I just look back at all of the organizations that I've worked with who are trying to advance pay equity, who are trying to promote opportunities for folks who are underrepresented in all levels of government to be able to run. And they're doing study after study and to examine the barriers of why people aren't running, why BIPOC folks aren't running, why LGBTQ folks aren't running, why women aren't running, why younger people aren't running. And there's many barriers, but financial insecurity is one of those barriers. And I get that we can't do anything about that feeling of financial security during someone's election, but we can at the end when they've been
elected when they've been selected by their constituents to do a job. We're not a nonprofit organization. I've certainly given a lot of free labor to a lot of nonprofit organizations, but the cost to run, the cost to engage in the time, for me in my life has been a barrier to running until now, until I reached an income level that where I could sacrifice the time. Even just 10 years ago in my early 30s, I wanted to run for office, but I couldn't even afford to live in Middleton at the time. I was working 2 jobs, one of which was full-time with the state of Wisconsin, and had to work a low-wage job to supplement that income. And I couldn't swap that out to serve on a city council or even some commissions and boards and other things. So that's where I'm coming from. So like young folks and millennials, women, particularly women of color, it's been found that the high opportunity cost and risk of financial security are big factors in their consideration for running for office. And I think if we adjust the compensation to market realistic levels, we are signaling to the future candidates that they can commit the time it takes to serve their districts and city well, and they can get compensated for that time. And so, to some of the clauses in the resolution, it's based in research that folks who are more financially comfortable tend to be the ones that run and serve. And it does skew by gender, and it does skew by race. I think I'll stop there, but just as also thinking about, as a single person, I don't have children so that I can do these things. But if I was a single mom, I wouldn't be able to do this because the compensation that we receive for this time wouldn't cover the childcare costs to be engaged in these meetings and all of the prep work engaged and the constituent contacts. And so for me, this is an equity and inclusion issue.
Alder Jackson.
I myself piggyback off what Alder Cole said. It's always been about equity and inclusion for me. I agree with what Elder Schaefer said. I didn't even know a dime was involved in running. I ran, and I'm almost sure the man knows I ran for the passion for the people. That's what I ran for. But what Alder Nelson said, to me, it's about our worth, about our sacrifice and the time that we put in. It's about our worth. Also, as Alder Nelson said, there's like she has her own private business. Me, I work, many of you know, from my Zoom calls, I'm at Chili's. So I'm picking up extra time. I'm comfortable, but I'm picking up extra time for extra activities for my daughter or whatever the case may be. So if there's a compensation, it would help that I don't have to be on Zoom calls trying to make council meetings, which I sit on 5 commissions, trying to pick up extra time there to compensate myself, so I never look at the dollar sign. Like I said, it's about the work. Are we not worthy of being compensated for the time that we put in? Many of us, I know not just me, even when we're not, in our council forum, we're getting tons of emails and calls. Our phone is blown up for our constituents who want us to volunteer, to participate, to support, to be there. So we're actually putting in a lot of time. So to me, it's about worth.
Alder Lorman's next.
Thanks. Just recapping a little bit of the conversation that we did have during the finance. Where I saw this is, first of all, because we are working through a budget cycle and we don't have money. And any money we have, no matter how small amount it is, needs to go to city staff for city staff retention and to pay them for their time, their effort, and their work. It's that simple. And we're only going to be constrained more as we look towards the future financially. There's simply going to be less money available. So as Alder Schaefer said, it's a little pat. So that's all it is. $1,000 more a year is not the difference between your financial capacity or capability to run for office or not. We've all talked about challenges in our lives, opportunities, or this and that. I became a single father in 2004. And I put my daughter through daycare here in Middleton at Little Red. And I was, some people know how much it costs, but I was spending, I think at that time, about $1,200 to $1,600 a month. So whether there's more money involved in a position like this or not really was immaterial. It's the fact that I was at a point in my life where my responsibility was to my daughter. And no amount of money could pay for daycare, babysitting, or any way to make up for that. So the money we get is an acknowledgement of serving our time. I would rather see money spent and put back to the city for its staff, for retention, for anything that we can put their way to keep them. We have exceptional staff in this city. And so I think to reward us rather than reward them doesn't send a good message when we sit here and go down our budget very carefully and say, sorry, we're not going to do this. We're not going to hire another person to assist in HR so we can really have more adequate training and development at that level. Sorry, we're not going to move ahead with modernization of some of our financial management tools and systems. Sorry, we're not going to update some of our IT systems and infrastructure. Okay. Sorry, we're not going to throw more money towards opportunity to look for more alternatives to our carbon burning equipment, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, and so on and so forth. So I think until we're in a position to have money where we can comfortably say, yeah, there's money, let's do it. Let's go for it. I'm not completely opposed to compensation, as we talked about for the city judge to pay into the ETF system, things like that. I mean, there might be some small things we have to do, but for the sake of it. The other thing I'm concerned about the language in this resolution. It implies that whole swaths of minorities are simply financially challenged because they're a minority. And I think what we have to be extremely careful about, and I said this before, and it's a term called positionality. You know, we're trained not to be not biased, but it is important to provide context of our background and our experiences. So I think what we have to be so mindful of is it would be fantastic to have more people who are simply all ranks of any aspect of an underrepresented population of our society in Middleton to be on this council. Is $1,000 more a year going to make a difference? Or is it how we adopt a different posture and position with our city? Is there other things we can do to really change our overall picture and perspective? So I think the optics are don't align in giving ourselves money. It looks selfish.
Alder Nelson, I think you had a thought, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I did. And Alder Lorman, yeah, your thoughts are really excellent and thorough. What makes me a little more comfortable about this is that it isn't for us. It's for the next elected council. And I don't know the answer to your question, will $1,000 more a year make a difference for someone of being able to do it or not? Because it might. And I worry that the only people we could get on our committees and our council will be retirees who can, I didn't mean to look at you.
Thank you.
No, I just don't want to see only one group represented on these committees and councils. And, you know, I didn't know this was a paid position when I started either. Maybe it needs to be known. Maybe it's something that we can get more people to run if it's something that can be worth their time. I don't know. Those are my random thoughts.
Alder Haniro and then Alder Schaefer.
Yes, thank you. I just want to respond to a few things. Alder Crow, you mentioned the appearance. You don't like the appearance of giving ourselves raises. As Alder Nelson noted, this is for future alders, which we may be or we may not be. I would say that for 15 and 16 years, council members have worried about the appearance of increasing salaries. That's why the compensation has not gone up. I have heard from my constituents, you all know I do a monthly newsletter. When I mentioned in my February newsletter that I brought this up to the Finance Committee at the time in January to ask that we consider at some point this year an increase in compensation, or at least an evaluation of compensation, I only got positive feedback, and the folks who wrote me back said they thought 15 years was far too long to wait for a raise, and that we deserved a raise. That's just two data points. It is a squidgy thing. Alder Schaefer, you said 10 years, it's 15 and 16 years since the compensation was set.
Get older, you can't do math.
Yeah. Alder Cole mentioned the desire for, maybe a reasonable market, a more reasonable increase, sending a signal to future candidates. I feel strongly that if we want to have a council of people of means, we should stay the course. But I don't think that is good for us. I don't think it's good for our community. I agree with Alder Jackson. We devote a lot of time. We all do. I would not hold anyone to the same standard I set for myself. And so I would appreciate if people would not hold the rest of us to the standards they set for themselves. The city staff totally agree that the city staff deserve more compensation. And that is something that I'm hoping we will be able to do in a big way once we get more net new construction in 2020 for our 2025 budget. And also with the closure of our TID, the $36,000 that is the full amount of all three levels, the compensation level increases, is not going to get us even a half-time person. So it isn't a significant amount for staff. I would note that we're devoting $12,000 of next year's capital budget to a private landscaping project. And that's a third of what the suggested increase would be. Can $1,000 make a difference? At least half of us didn't have an opponent in their race. 23 of the last 32 elections were uncontested. And I can tell you $1,000, if I had known I was going to get $1,000 more, I wouldn't have sweated buying signs and investing in flyers. If you had an opponent, you had to do these things. We all knocked on doors, but that can make the difference. And again, I don't know why we would default to thinking it won't make a difference. Why don't we default to thinking it will make a difference? It's just as viable. And yeah, that's what I had to say.
Alder Schaefer.
Yeah, and I took all my points, made them better than I could have done. I was going to say, yeah, I ran opposed, and it cost me way more than $1,000 for what I had to do just to get to the office. And I wasn't counting on getting reimbursed, but that was an expense. It was also part of there. And the other thing is, Alder Lerman says there's a lot of great things we can do with money, but I think the $34,000 is not really going to address most of those issues. And so I think it becomes partly a trade-off. And so I still feel this is okay.
Thank you for that. Any other thoughts? Alder Crow.
Just maybe a couple more, or a thought and a question. And what Alder Cole said about some of the marginalized people, I get that compels me more than anything else, I think. Again, I'm also one who didn't know that I was going to get anything out of this other than serving the community. So I can understand those arguments. I get that. Question as to future raises. Is this going to come up again in 15 years where they're going to say, oh, they haven't changed it since, the 2023 council? Is there any way that a cost of living increase can be included? Maybe that's more.
Alder
Sure.
Crow, I asked that question, I
Yeah.
think when we approached this topic in 2017 or 2018. And my understanding, and I'm looking to the city administrator, that it is a state law that we cannot do that. Is that accurate from my recall?
I don't see anything. I have the state statute up right now, and I don't see anything one way or the other as to whether or not cost of living would be allowed.
So maybe that is a memory misrecall.
Yeah, before we would include that, I mean, well, first of all, I guess, regardless of what happens if this resolution passes tonight, in order for this to actually become effective, I'll have to come back with an ordinance. I don't think that there's anything precluding that.
Okay.
But I in preparation of an ordinance, if it looks like we're going to go that direction, I would reserve the right to come back with a
Review
different
the answer.
opinion.
Well, I think that's a great question. And if that is open and that I don't recall that correctly, or I was misinformed, I'm glad that you're bringing this out.
And
because
I
don't
realize that
wanna
can be a
have-
danger too, of a built-in raise. That can be dangerous.
I would say it's probably not allowed to just build in the raise because it does have to be approved by the
As the-
council.
Right.
But I doubt it would be prohibited to build in something saying they should be this compensation level should be reevaluated every so often.
Yeah.
That seems like it would pass muster.
Yeah, I think that's important. It strikes me, we can't vote on raising the amount of money that each year's council has to pay without accounting for what the future people are going to have to say about that. So, yeah. I like the idea of putting in a periodic revisiting, but I personally don't think we're in a position to automatically build in a cost of living on this one. Doesn't strike me as.
Okay, so was that yes or no? I can't, I think I lost track.
It's a yes that I would encourage a periodic review.
Okay.
It's a no in terms of putting in an automatic cost of living now that we would vote on.
Understood. Thank you for clarifying.
I agree because I think that makes budget decisions for future councils that are not our decisions to make. So
And maybe that's how it was explained to me. And maybe I just misunderstood it. Okay, thank you for,
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, you are making a budget decision for the future
Well,
councils. It's just how many budget decisions for how many future councils is really the issue, but.
thank you.
And that's my biggest problem with it.
So Matt, if it's built in, it's easier. It's just less of a discussion. Kendra saying no.
Well, maybe. he
I
had a
think the
point, yeah.
evaluation, the requirement, if you will, for reevaluation every so often, it would be difficult to come up with a term because of the different terms. Mayor's 3 years, judges 4 years, and we're 2 years. But to say something like no less than whatever years, I think that could be worked into an ordinance, but I don't think an automatic increase could be worked in.
Madam Mayor, a suggestion from HR is that we do a staff kind of reevaluation every 4 years. Maybe that would be the time to tie any future discussion of future updates for these three positions in that same cycle.
I appreciate that. And thank you to our HR director for that feedback. Alder Hanira?
I would ask a question of my colleagues. Is the municipal judge proposed compensation acceptable? And I ask about that one specifically because that is currently in the budget, the draft budget or proposed budget. And if members don't have concerns about that level, we could go forward with that particular amount. I would consider a different motion, but superseding my own motion, to basically zero in on the second resolved clause, which if someone can bring it up, that we direct the L&O committee to establish the amounts and effective dates for increases in compensation and to prepare including a provision to reevaluate every 4 years concurrent with the staff salary, every 5 years concurrent with the staff salary reevaluation, and to prepare the proposed ordinance changes for presentation to council for consideration at or before the council meeting on November 21st, 2023.
I would add, I like where you're going with this.
Wait, we need a second first.
Okay, then discussion.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
I'll
Go ahead.
second that.
And discussion, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I like where you're going with this. As an ordinance, say every 5 years, then the burden isn't just randomly placed on any common council. All of a sudden, here we are, how many years down the road? 17 years, 16 years down the road, and all of a sudden this is put on us, and it's, there's some tension. Okay, so now we have an ordinance. It says, you know what, every 5 years, this is going in front of the common council, right? And we're just gonna discuss it. Now at that time, we wanna increase, fine. We don't wanna increase, don't. But, we're being, and part of this resolution talks a lot about equity for all people. And so, and that's what I was kind of trying to get at before. I want the city's gonna take this on, then make it equitable. Well, we have an ordinance, it says every 5 years, we discuss this. I don't think we should box ourselves in with a percentage or amount to say it has to go up this or that with, say, inflation. But it's out there now for discussion, because you'll evaluate at that time what an appropriate amount is based on the current economic conditions. Would you agree? Okay, so, and now it comes across with a much leveler playing field.
If I'll say something, I heard a few things. Alder Nelson had mentioned, Alder Cole had mentioned it. I would like for the council not to be like, I don't want us to put up a barrier, but LGBTQ, somebody from workforce housing or anything, feel like they can't run for this office because they can't afford it. Like we said, all of us tonight, we're well-to-do. Okay, we can do it, but I don't want anybody to feel like they're pushed out because they're not well-to-do. I can't afford to do that right now. I can't do this. I think that there should be some diversity and inclusion in the council. And whether you be rich, whether you be poor, whether you be middle class, that you can run and you can sit on council. It brings a diversity. It brings different thoughts for different people. Another thing that my concern is all the Naira brought it up, is it's been 15 years. 2000, and I think she said 8, former council was being paid way more than what council is here. Now, I don't know about anybody else. I work, and you don't go backwards, you go up. If you take a cut, then you take a demotion. And every council is the same council has been since 2008. So how do we go down in how we pay the council unless anybody's getting demoted? So I think these are the things that we look at. Once again, it's not about the money. It's about the worth. It's about the sacrifice and other things of the diversity, inclusion. I mean, what are we doing here? We're struggling, yes, with money issues, but even like Alder Schaefer said, what is it, $35,000? Is it really going to fix a road?
If I may, I think your point's well made that things only go up. My biggest issue with this is it's almost a 50% increase. I have a really hard time with that in one fell swoop. I understand we're making up for 15 years of ignoring it, but I'm uncomfortable with spending a future budget at that kind of rate. if we can come back with something that's a little bit easier to swallow adjustment wise, I might look at that differently. But the fact that the mayor is going from 14 to 21 makes they're just really big numbers for me to adjust to. Also, 36,000 is what I make when I work full time. So that is one position. That is somebody's full-time job. So I don't want us to think about this being a flash in the pan. Like, that's somebody's job that we could potentially having join us. So I don't want to diminish anybody's value.
I'm gonna ask you, Alder Wilkes, for a clarifying question. Is there a percentage that you would be more comfortable with?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay,
I mean, there's so many factors that play when you start to talk about. Off the top of my head, no.
I appreciate that. Now, the motion in front of us is solely on the judge, if that's what I recall correctly, Alder Naira.
Well, no, I'm sorry if I conflated two things. I had asked the question about the municipal judge, but then I went ahead and made a motion for all three elected positions.
Thank you for
Because
clarifying.
if the decision comes back from if we approve the motion and the decision comes back from LNO not to increase the municipal judge salary at all or at the level in the proposed resolution, then we'll just make an adjustment to the budget and we can move any savings from the, I think it's 7904, move any savings from that into the the personnel contingency for compensation increases for staff in 24. But just to be clear, and if you'd like me to restate the motion, I can. So we would not be voting on the resolution. We would be voting on a motion to direct the License and Ordinance Committee to establish the amounts and effective dates of increases in compensation for elected officials, including a provision to evaluate compensation every 5 years concurrent with staff salary evaluations, and to prepare the proposed ordinance changes, I should say any proposed ordinance changes for presentation to council for consideration at or before the council meeting on November 21st, 2023.
All right, thank you for going over that motion so kindly. Any last discussion? And you were seconded by Alder Lorman. Thank you. Any last discussion to that? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the ordinance to direct LNO on establishing the amounts and the dates to increase the amounts of pay for the electeds, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
The motion passes 7-1. All right. Moving on to committee appointments. The mayoral appointment of Nick Famularo to Workforce Housing. Do I have a motion?
Yes, this is Haniro. I move that we approve the appointment of Nick Famularo to Workforce Housing.
Do I have a second?
This is Cole. I will second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving Nick to Workforce Housing, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is the mayoral appointment of Michelle Narrowetz to Golf Course Advisory Committee. Do I have a motion?
This is Lucas. I'll move approval.
Do I have a second?
This is Jackson. I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving Michelle to the Golf Course Advisory Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is the reports on city committees, boards, and commissions from alderpersons. Alder Schaefer.
Just had my first meeting with the Sustainability Committee. And it went very well. Great people on that committee and a lot of praise for Alder and Ira has been, and stuff. But anyways, we were working very hard on a document that comes for city staff to basically say that the city, we came up with 5 ideas about how to be sustainable. And so this is a working draft to give to the city employees, to give them directions as to how those goals and those standards. There's a very elaborate document was put together. It's way too big, has way too many words, so we're paring it down, but the committee is very strongly put behind this, and I think it's great. So I'm going to help with this as well. So this you should expect within a couple months.
Great.
We're also decided to meet with city employees to get their take on how to implement some of the things we think we would like them to implement, but make sure that it's doable from their standpoint. So that's kind of.
Thank you so much for that. Alder Wilkes.
If I may, just to extend the invitation that Brian sent out to the social. It's not an, it's a tour of the space that is up for licensing approval from L&O. Any questions? Matt will have some information for us, hopefully on Friday at 2 o'clock.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. And Alder Jackson.
This is Alder Jackson. I'm happy to report that on landmarks, we have finally made some movement on the mounds. Yes, we've got designation on all the mounds that are in Middleton, and we're working with Whole Chunk to get the wordage for the signage to have them designated and where they should be, and people won't be skateboarding on the mounds anymore.
I appreciate that. I should clap for sustainability too, and for our outing. But I did ask Alder Jackson when he told me in passing about this, and I said, "Now, how many mounds do we have?" So I'm going to ask you publicly. How many mounds do we have?
If I clearly understand, it's a little over 100 mounds.
I thought it was like 10 or 15.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm sharing how astounded I was.
And she went to the historical society stateside and got all the mound locations. And now they're working with Whole Chunk to get the exact wordage for the plaques to be put out.
Wonderful.
So
That's fantastic.
excited. So excited.
So we scored well in the Whole Chunk Nation.
We should have mound tours
Yes.
that we offer.
Yes.
That would be awesome. I will go and we should amplify. We should do some social media
There we
posting.
go.
Be grand. We'll get some outings in the fresh air.
There we go.
Any other updates? Okay.
Airport, the rock ramp raised $36,254.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that money goes to the Badger Honor Flights. They ended the year with an event called Girls in Aviation, which was really sponsored by Women in Aviation, a larger organization offshoot, like of the 99s. There's a lot of history to that, but it was a well-attended event, and it was specifically targeted at young girls. And it was an on-the-ground event, hands-on activities, things like that. There was a final event, and this is hosted through Experimental Aircraft Association. It's known as Young Eagles, and the airport holds a few of those rallies a year. And again, this is just pilots and staff volunteering their time, giving airplane rides to kids. Again, just education opportunities along the lines of STEM. They wrapped up a week-long camp called the Willa Brown Academy. And this is a week-long program, again, targeting kids. And the academy is named after Willa Brown. You have to do some historical research, but she was one of the very early female aviators. She was obviously pioneer in her field as a Black aviator. And then finally, just let you all know that the adoption of the unleaded fuel at the airport also helped the city achieve its LEED certification. So if the airport wasn't there, it probably didn't matter, but because the airport was there and the airport demonstrated its capacity to keep these things in mind, it was useful for the city.
Very cool.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one update from the Commission on Aging I'd like to share, just to spotlight staff who are doing fantastic work. So Tammy Derrickson, the director of the center, has been selected to chair the committee that does the accreditation of senior centers around Wisconsin for the Wisconsin Association of Senior Centers. So I think it speaks volumes to the quality of her work as part of the association and for our senior center in Middleton.
Great. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Maybe we could post on our webpage or maybe we could ask our media friends to do an
Yeah.
update on that.
Right.
So all good things. And thank you for sharing those wonderful things. And with that, we're moving to convening into closed session. Do we have to do a roll call on that?
Madam Chair, I move that we convene into closed session and I request a roll call vote.
Thank you for that. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Jackson, I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay.
Okay, Alder Schaefer,
Yes.
Alder Wilkes,
Yes.
Alder Cole,
Yes.
Mayor Kuhn,
Yes.
Alder Nelson,
Yes.
Alder Jackson,
Yes.
Alder Nairo,
Yes.
Alder Lorman,
Yes.
Alder Crow.
Yes.